Why would Canadians trust that framework when there was an entire other agreement in place that your president then contravened on multiple instances?
Quite the tense interview. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we got Vasi Kapelos and the ambassador from America. This is the second part of the interview. I showed a brief clip of this a couple days ago. This conversation heads down a path talking about trust. There's a lot of awkward moments, a lot of dead silence, and a lot of question marks. Let's jump into this. We've got this from Canada Proud. It says La Bar Sport, La Vegas, a sports bar in Quebec City, is facing government and media scrutiny after saying it will not hire any servers who are woke, pro-liberal, pro-CAQ, or would have called the police if their neighbors had visited during the world event. I mean, the first comment here we've got, yet no one is concerned that Tim Hortons only hires East Indians who speak Punjabi. I mean, I saw a video just the other day of a restaurant who refused to hire anyone who wasn't from India. It's a real problem in our country now, yet the Liberals won't be fixing that problem anytime soon. So business finally standing up against all the woke BS that is in Quebec. We got Marty up north posting this one, saying the managers at the CPP, Canada Pension Plan, paid themselves very handsomely for a mere 8% return on investment. A common exchange-traded fund would have done better for 1.5% investment fee. He says his personal return was 26%. He says, I would opt out of the CPP in a heartbeat if I was allowed. I mean, just goes back to what I showed the other day on Ontario pension plan that's getting managed by Brookfield, set up by Mark Carney, only got a 9% return, yet Brookfield scooping $1 billion off the top in management fees. Not only that, Carney and Brookfield trying to get their hands on the CPP. They proposed like a $50 billion fund, trying to get their greedy little fingers on the CPP cash, not to bring big returns to Canadians, but just to have big, juicy, lucrative management fees. People passing this around, this is all the board members and their salaries. You can see here, $5.1 million for the president CEO, John Graham. Christina Fanjoy, $1.4 million, $2.4 million, $3.7 million. And no, Christina Fanjoy is not related to Bruce Fanjoy. I already looked that up. Weird that there's more than one person with the last name Fanjoy. So jumping back over to this interview here with Vasi Kapelos and this U.S. ambassador, this gets pretty heated. Talking about tariffs, talking about trust between Canada and America, because a lot of Canadians don't trust America now because of Donald Trump's actions. This guy pushes back against Vasi hard.
I wanted to ask you about the economic relationship and speaking of negotiations and ask you whether the Trump administration wants, to be blunt, a new free trade deal with Canada.
We want a trade agreement with Canada. Absolutely. Okay. I always had trouble. I still remember the first vote I had in Congress on a trade deal. It was NAFTA. So that's the early 90s. Okay. Well before you were born.
Sadly not true, but I'll take the compliment.
Okay. But, you know, it's, and they said a free trade agreement. And it's kind of like, oh, great. This is fairly simple. Free trade agreement to me is, you know, you pull it out and on one side, you know, these are the tariffs that, you know, we have on Mexican products. It'd be a big zero. Here's a product, the tariff they had of us, and it would be a big zero. Free trade, right? That's free trade, accessibility. And I said, and I told my staff, get me a copy and I'll read it. You know, it won't take long. Free is zero. And I got a book that was, you know, that thick. And you go through it. And what is it? It's all tables of tariffs. Okay. Asparagus was a big product of in my old congressional district. So you look into page 632, tariffs on asparagus. And then you go somewhere else, tariffs on apples, tariffs on car parts. And that's not free trade. Okay. I think we want to get to as free, as fair, as equitable, as simple trade with a partner who we have 5,000 miles, a 5,000-mile border. We want to get to as free, fair, and equitable as Canada allows us to go.
Do you think, I guess I respectfully challenge, like, why would we believe that to be true when the United States initially are the ones who put extra tariffs? I'm not disagreeing with your point that free trade feels a little hard to believe when there are so many tariffs that were already in place on both sides. But there are additional tariffs that were levied by this administration that are in no way buttressing the idea of free trade.
Government of Canada Trade Commissioner Service.
so he came prepared to clap back. Donald Trump imposing those 10%, 15%, 25% tariffs, that's his negotiating tactic to get Canada off edge, get, well, Trudeau back off his game, get him feeling uncomfortable. That's Donald Trump's negotiating tactic. He'll impose big tariffs and then he'll pull back and find somewhere where hopefully he's ahead, not negative.
Understanding the CUSMA compliant. 99.9% of products, we call it USMCA, trade coming south from Canada to the US. 99.9%, according to a Canadian government agency, is tariff-free today.
But that's not everything. That is, for example, that first there were tariffs levied on everything. Then it just stayed on steel and aluminum. Then if it was CUSMA or USMCA compliant, there was a 90-day reprieve. It's not as simple as you portray it at this moment in time. There are still distinct tariffs that are in place that run counter to the idea of free trade.
This is the Canadians saying this. This is not the U.S. State Department. This is not the U.S. government. I have trouble believing that number sometimes, right?
Well, that's because Mark Carney pulled back all the tariffs secretly during the election. It isn't quite as simple as he's portraying it here, as Vasi said.
But this is the Canadian government saying that that's the amount of because there's been bounces back and forth, all right? But the bottom line, most, whether it's substantially tariff-free coming from Canada going into the United States. And because like you said, there is a 90-day reprieve. I think that ends in that ends in July, at which point in time we'll either have a new agreement, a framework to move forward, or, we'll see what happens at that point in time. I'm thinking we're all hoping where there will be an agreement and a framework to move forward.
Do you think that possibility exists that soon?
Yes, absolutely.
Why?
We just got to try. We did a trade agreement with China. We have a framework. We have a framework trade agreement with China. We have a framework for a trade agreement with the UK. I was in the meeting, where the two-part meeting. We had the scrum with the president and Carney, which I think they handled the 51st state issue. Boom, gone. They did it with a smile on their face, went and had lunch, and it's kind of like, okay, let's get to work. Okay, here are the kinds of issues that both of us have concerns about, but in this hour and a half that we're going to have lunch, we're going to lay the framework for our teams to come together and present an agreement to move forward. And I absolutely.
So first off, let's jump back to his 99.9% tariff free. Right now, there's still tariffs on food. And as Vasi pointed out, steel, aluminum, there's big sectors getting hit. So it's not necessarily the percentage of tariffs. It's what the dollar value effect is that really should be looked at. Going back to our trusty tariff finder here, this is on the Government Canada website. Put in United States here. I put in asparagus because that was the example he gave. There's only two options here. But if we look at other products like dairy, for example, it gets really complicated because it's not just butter or cheese. These are the general categories. Say if you click on milk, then it starts asking you, do you want concentrated, dried, powdered, or other? So say you say other because it's fresh milk. Then it starts breaking it down, sweetened or other. Then it's the percentage. So this is how you get to 99.9. There's so many options for tariffs that just under milk alone, there's probably hundreds. Say if you say greater than 1% but less than 6%. Then you open this up and you have more options in here, whether it's over the supply agreement or under the supply agreement. So that's why we shouldn't be looking at the percentage 99.9. That doesn't really tell you how much dollar value, how much effect on Canada this really has on us. For that reason, that's why we're seeing all these layoffs in the steel sector. Is he going to argue, well, that's just in the 0.1%, so it doesn't matter? Well, it's actually affecting a lot of jobs.
Why would Canadians trust that framework when there was an entire other agreement in place that your president then contravened on multiple instances?
There is no doubt, okay, and I think you got to be very, very careful with the word trust, okay? I spent a lot of time on our national security issues, okay?
Wow, the tension in this room. You got to be careful with the word trust. The way he said that, though, talking about trust, it felt like a warning.
At one time in 2014, NATO met. And every country in NATO unanimously committed and pledged to spend 2% of their GDP on national security. I don't have a question in terms of on a day in and day out basis, do I trust the Canadians? I believe we can trust the Canadians and we can work with the Canadians. Am I disappointed that they're well short of their commitment on NATO? The answer is yes, I am.
This is a very fair argument. I mean, Canada didn't live up to 2%, so the trust goes both ways. Donald Trump broke his agreement, so did Canada. Canada broke it first. Can't deny that.
They committed to that, just like the U.S., and they haven't. But does that mean that I go home or I tell my colleagues in Washington, you can't trust the Canadians? No, that has not crossed my mind.
I think that's a fair point. I think I've interviewed countless
Of course, it's a fair point.
No, I think I've interviewed countless defense ministers about our record on that and the fact that we have not met our commitments.
Right.
Yeah, I should clarify. I said Canada hasn't met our agreements. It's the Liberal Party.
This is your president signing an agreement and then contravening it himself. And in the meantime, in the interim, saying that he would use economic force to annex us. I think it would be almost naive of us to not at least raise the question of trust in moving forward in an economic partnership. Would it not?
That's a question that you can ask amongst Canadians, all right? But if you ask me, can Canada trust America? It's kind of like, yeah, I think so. I don't think so. I know so. All right. There's a deep history going back between our two countries. All right. We fought side by side on the beaches of Normandy. There are lots of Americans of Dutch descent who were liberated by Canadian troops, including my parents.
Unfortunately, I don't think those arguments work when, even though Trump was using the 51st state rhetoric as a negotiating tool, it has spooked a lot of Canadians. I don't think this guy really understands how a lot of Canadians feel towards America now. People are selling their vacation homes, their condos in Florida and Arizona, vowing to never go to America again because of this. So clearly this guy, maybe the Trump administration doesn't realize how deep those comments really went in Canada. I think this could have been patched up very easily if Pierre Poilievre went in, made a deal with Donald Trump. But when it comes down to it, especially when you have a lot of immigrants into a country who were fleeing from countries that were oppressed and run by authoritarian regimes, when you have a guy saying, we're going to take over your country, we're going to use economic force and take you over and become the 51st state, that brings up trauma of the past that people don't want to relive. And I don't think Trump thought about that when he started to double, triple, and quadruple down on the 51st state comments.
No, I believe you can trust us. I trust Canada. Are there issues that need to be resolved in a constructive way that I think the president and the prime minister demonstrated a couple of weeks ago that they can move forward? Yeah, I think so. I'm confident they can. Is the objective,
just final question, is the objective from your vantage point that all tariffs on both sides are removed? Like, is that, I feel as though Canadians have not really gotten even a clear answer from the federal government. Like, what is the end goal of all of this? Is it to go back to what it was before tariffs?
Well, the president has made it clear that there will probably be a tariff on every country that we do business with. Okay? I mean, he's campaigned on that and has said that. I think what I would hope that Canadians would be striving for is to lay out all the things that Canada has, the capability, critical minerals, automotive, energy. You go right down the list, things that we can work together on, defense, fentanyl, stopping the number of deaths in both of our countries from fentanyl, that we can come together with a deal that gives Canada the lowest tariffs of any country that America negotiates an agreement with.
So not no tariffs, but the lowest?
The lowest.
Okay, Ambassador.
And if, that could be zero, but I mean, the president, I think, has indicated, there will be tariffs.
Okay, Ambassador, I'm going to leave it on that note. I appreciate all your time today.
This guy really said a lot. He actually says more on the situation than Trump does. Comes down to what kind of leverage do we have and would we use, and what kind of deal can we make? Is Mark Carney playing some long game where he's bringing in the king and lining up all these pieces, threatening to buy fighter jets from European Union instead of from Lockheed Martin? This doesn't bode well because America is so big and powerful. We have to ally with them. We can't make them our enemy or country we don't want to have much to do with. We rely on them to survive. It puts us in a very tricky position, but Mark Carney seems to be pushing the buttons really hard here, but the same token then is doing nothing in the back end. I should clarify too, I got half my family in America. So when I go down there, there's obvious differences. The way we speak up here, different than down there. We're all just people. We're all really very much the same. There's obviously different culture stuff. You go down to Texas or the South or Colorado. But in general, Canadians like Americans, Americans like Canadians. I think there's a way to bridge this, but it's going to take someone real special to make that bridge, to mend this divide between Canada and America. And I think it's going to be after Donald Trump is out of the picture. Because as we've seen from polling, about 75% of Canadians don't like Donald Trump. And this has obviously just made it worse. Trump keeps changing his mind, not very reassuring. People want some reassurance here, and that kind of sums it up. The MPs need to cancel summer vacation to deal with the crisis, get to the table with the USA. Exactly. There should be some summer vacation. We're dealing with the biggest crisis. If this is indeed the biggest crisis, then they should 100% not be going on break. So if Carney does, which it does seem they will be taking break, then this isn't a big crisis because Carney knows something in the back end that we don't know. Either that or he doesn't care about Canadians. It's only one or the other. You can't have both ways. The relationship is over. It's time to move on. It's not that simple. We rely on America to survive. I don't think people really realize if America just disappeared and was taken away by an alien race tomorrow, Canada would crumble within a year, less than a year.